Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 24th of October, 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Well, the weather, I have to say, in Plymouth is pretty cold and gloomy and very, very wet. That seems to be the bulk of reports from across England at least. However, Manchester seems to be dry at the moment, and it's not too bad north of the border. So where does that take us, Mike? War, probably, the key topic of the UK and the US at the moment?
Well, certainly. And South China Sea. Well, the US in a big huff at the moment because the Philippine President, Rodrigo Duterte, seems to be sidling up alongside President Xi. So they're getting more upset about it. So unlike the Russians driving their ships past the English Channel, on their way to actual operations somewhere, the United States, like a petulant child, have decided to sail USS Decatur, which is, well, what is this, a guided missile destroyer? Is this a serious ship, Brian?
Well, it's modern, it's reasonably capable, but what you always have to think of is one ship is one ship. This is the nonsense over the Type 45s that we hear from the UK Ministry of Defence, that this is, a world-beating air defence ship is what they say, but it's one ship. And when it's sunk, it's sunk. So we've got to be realistic. One ship is simply posturing, which is what they were accusing the Russians of a few days ago.
Well, indeed. But as I say, the Russians had a purpose. The Americans didn't. Well, the Chinese government wrote an article. This is in the Global Times, but it's actually come from the Chinese People's Daily, and they're saying that China will take a series of effective countermeasures should this happen again. The illegal entry of US warships into Chinese waters without permission seriously violates China's sovereignty and security interests, breaches both Chinese and international laws as well, and poses a threat to peace, security, as well as order in the relevant waters. They make the point, of course, that China is not causing or offering any restraint on freedom of navigation. They're saying, ships are quite entitled to drive by, but they've got to ask permission first.
Yeah.
So that continues to just be a stick poked in there.
It's something that's obviously going to increase tension, not decrease it. And this seems to be the pattern from the UK and the US at the moment.
Absolutely. And of course, Russia also getting a bit of it. Well, the Russians have commented on the whole Syria situation over the weekend. This is Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov, and he was saying that there are only two options: Assad sitting in Damascus or al-Nusra sitting in Damascus, and Assad must sit in Damascus to ensure a political settlement. He went on to say some countries are trying to play with the devil and use terrorists to get rid of Assad, and some just say thoughtlessly that Assad must leave. If Damascus falls and terrorists take hold there will be no political settlement then. I would love to be optimistic to say that this is, say it may be seen now in the future, but unfortunately the information we receive would not allow us to be thoughtlessly optimistic, and clearly the international community faces very long, intense work. The territory of Syria must be liberated. It must be liberated, and everything must be done to prevent the country's breakup, which could have catastrophic consequences for the entire region. And the goal, which the president voiced, as Putin voiced in the very beginning, is assistance to the Syrian legitimate authorities in fighting terrorism and fighting IS and other terrorist organizations. So they've got it absolutely hit the nail on the head there. Some countries are trying to play with the devil and use terrorists to get rid of Assad. And he's saying that, basically Syria has to be liberated, the whole of Syria, not parts of it. And he's basically calling out the West for having the policy of balkanization of the country.
Which is absolutely correct. Regime change was always the agenda. That was the agenda in Libya. It's regime change to achieve direct control from the West, is basically the routine. The only thing that is interesting is to watch what Turkey's up to at the moment. So we've got Turkish military operating pretty close to Aleppo at the moment. And what's being said is this is fascinating because they are attacking groups that the US is supporting. So pretty complex situation. Russians spelling it out fairly clearly. Well, the Russian fleet has disappeared. It's quite remarkable, but after the mega hype that we had this Russian fleet coming through the English Channel, there were corvettes moving up from the Mediterranean. They'd split the Royal Navy. It's almost as if there was a major battle going to take place in the English Channel. But here we are. All of a sudden, everything has disappeared, because if you just do a little bit of Google to see what's happened to that fleet, nobody wants to talk about them anymore, Mike. So presumably the hype, the spin, the attempt to ramp up fear was just done when they're coming through the Channel. And now the fleet has carried on its passage down to the Mediterranean. We're not really interested in that anymore, and it's just disappeared.
Are the Portuguese and Spanish crowing about it?
Well, we can't see any sign of that, Mike. And Admiral West, who is the big man, of course, that's constantly used to comment on the media, he accused Putin of willy posturing by moving this fleet. So this was the same retired admiral who was pictured dressed up as a pirate with his eye patch and a few pop stars and things, and he's pointing a finger at President Putin. I'll leave viewers to make their own mind up about that. Well, let's come on to the engine of British politics, which is child abuse and blackmail of those involved in child abuse. So it's only natural that the child abuse inquiry should be stalled and obfuscated to make sure that it certainly doesn't investigate any child abuse. This is the Mail headline: revealed child abuse inquiry lawyer has been paid £1,700 a day in taxpayers' cash since dramatically quitting the probe last month, even though he never goes to the office. So this is drawing the attention across to just the infighting over the inquiry. There's nothing to do with the children. Ben Emerson, he combined inquiry work with high-profile roles representing the widow of poisoned Russian dissident Litvinenko and writing reports for the United Nations. I find that a very interesting
combination.
Little combination there. And of course, the UN particularly good or not at protecting children. And on Friday, he's apparently at a UN meeting in New York. So is this man just a lawyer, or is he putting through international policy to do with children? But we thought that probably if you earn £1,700 a day, do you really give about the children or the inquiry? I wouldn't have thought so. So let's come in at the child issue from a slightly different angle. And this is an article from back in the summer. We missed it, I'm sorry to say, but it was apparently Ian Hislop's 56th birthday, the most razor-sharp takedowns from Britain's acerbic journalist. So there he is, star of Have I Got News for You? And if you're wondering what the significance is with today's news, we'd just like to bring your attention to Have I Got News for You, because it recently starred our very own Tim Farron MP. So they were having a good laugh together, because obviously it's great fun to go from being an MP to a star of screen. There's Mr. Farron on the right. But what we were interested in was that this was the key subject, which was laughing at Syrian children. So UK Column has been pointing out for months that Tim Farron, who called for more unaccompanied Syrian children to come into the country, refused to answer questions about their safety. And when more than 300 Syrian children simply disappeared in UK, and he admitted in an email that the chances were they'd been trafficked, prostituted, possibly even murdered, we've no idea. He wasn't going to take any action to see what had happened to those children. But it was great fun to have a laugh about this with Ian Hislop on Have I Got News for You? Sickening, Mike, when I watched it.
Sickening isn't the word that came to my mind, and my screen came very close to having a foot put through it, I have to say. Ian Hislop, of course, we should remember that whenever Have I Got News for You was deployed to poke fun at the allegations against the Leveson inquiry, it was Ian Hislop who was tasked with that particular job. This is not a very nice man, I don't think.
No, well, neither of them, so maybe they're a good pair. But if you think that it's bad enough to see Tim Farron on the show itself, they wanted to crow about this. This was a picture of him with his little boy band. We've captioned this from Queen Bee, Farron and his boy band to politics. What is the background of this man? We really don't know. What sort of MP makes a joke about children who simply disappear, and you then say, well, probably they've been prostituted or trafficked for sex abuse?
Well, it's
you make them leader of the Lib Dem party,
you
presumably.
do, and then of course, what you never do is answer any simple questions about how you're going to protect children, because of course your intention is not to, and neither is that the intention of any others. So, of course, the news today is that the jungle in Calais, the refugee camp, is being dismantled, as they say. And what was interesting in the coverage of this in the mainstream press, they are highlighting the fact that adults and children are going to be separated. So adults that are in this jungle, as they call it, are going to be taken to various locations in France. And the children, well, who knows where they're going to go. Well, children will just disappear, apparently, according to this lady, Yvette Cooper. Yvette Cooper has just in the last week or two been made the chairperson of the Home Affairs Select Committee. And she was on Radio 4 this morning absolutely saying that she wants the children in Britain, because of course Britain has a perfect record in this area. So if they stay in France, apparently they're going to disappear into child sex trafficking rings. That doesn't happen here, Brian, does it?
No, because we've set up committees to make sure that it doesn't happen, or at least the truth doesn't come out.
Well, indeed. So Tim Farron doesn't want to answer the question of what happens to the children once they appear in this country. I don't think Yvette Cooper is going to answer this question. She's too busy watching her husband dancing around on BBC every Saturday night or whatever. She went on to say that she's really worried that Britain left this situation far, far too late to help. And what else did she say? We know that there are some who the charities have been working with over many months, and they are still stuck in Calais today. These are children, of course. That's what's really worrying. Once the clearances start, we know that there's significant risk that many of those children and young people just disappear. That's what happened the last time when part of the camp was closed without a plan for the children and teenagers. And the consequences, they slip into the arms of smuggler gangs and traffickers just at the point at which they may have been able to be reunited with their families. They're lost. There are still hundreds of children and teenagers stuck in the camp, and the French authorities have not put in place proper alternatives for places for the children to go that are safe, and that's why I think it's right that Britain should be doing its bit as well. Well, Ms. Cooper, I once again ask the question, bearing in mind the amount of coverage that we've given this subject over the last number of months, and the fact that we've highlighted the number of children that have gone missing since they came here, and the number of children that have gone missing in care over the last 20 or 30 years. This is a national scandal. It's a crime. And the fact that MPs aren't doing anything to sort the problem out makes them accessories to the crime, in my opinion.
In the simplest terms, because of course we know that there are many victims of abuse and survivors of abuse who are absolutely pointing the finger at British politicians and members of the establishment. And I'd just like to add to that, we learnt a few days ago that the government's inquiry into child abuse has said that it will not further investigate the abuse of young girls at the Church of England's Kendal House. This is an absolutely disgraceful episode. You can read about it in Teresa Cooper's book, Pinned Down, later renamed Trust Nobody. I believe that second title is correct. But of course, young girls being drugged unconscious for days at a time and abused, and the Church of England covered it up. They clearly tried to scare off some of the abuse survivors so that none of the truth of this came out. and members of the local council who knew that the abuse was going on have now become politicians and are connected with who's our anti-fraud man, Mike? Mr. Pickles. So what we can see is that maybe they didn't know, maybe they were just ignorant of what was going on, but we can see that in so many of these abuse cases, when people did the right things and went to the police or their MPs, absolutely no action taken. So we say, and we'll continue to say, that of course it's child abuse and paedophilia, which is the fuel of our government system by which people can be blackmailed. And of course, we've already seen Tim Fortescue, the former Conservative whip with the Conservative government back in the 70s, who was happy to simply say, well, when we knew about the little boys and we fixed it, then we could trust the MPs to vote as we required. So we're in a perilous state in UK at the moment. What can we do about it? Well, most of it is to do with exposure, getting the truth out about what's really happening, and educating as many people as possible to the state of affairs in this country. So UK Column and the British Constitution Group both say that law and order has broken down in this country. British Constitution Group event on the 19th of November is all about reasserting the rule of law, recognising what's happening in the country. How do we now reassert the rule of law? And we're delighted to say that tickets are going very quickly. If you haven't got tickets and would like to come to that event, we encourage you to get online and book. More locally, thank you to the team that put on the event in Totnes on Saturday. This is one of the growing number of groups of people that are meeting to talk about what's happening with the country. It's not about UK Column or other small media outfits putting out the truth about what's happening. What's necessary is for local people to come together and to make it happen themselves.
Okay, live programs tonight. Ian Crane is back on Humanity versus Insanity at 7:30. He will be talking about the tangled webs of global corporatism. He'll have Mel Kelly from Scotland on the programme. That's at 7:30 tonight, ukcolumn.org/live. And then at 9 o'clock, we got Fracking Nightmare. Now, this is related to this story. Police officer tried to frame fracking protester for drink driving. This is Teagate. So during the past few days, Ian Crane has been at the IPCC disciplinary hearing into Inspector David Kehoe's treatment of Dr. Stephen Pearce. And Stephen Pearce will be on the programme tonight to discuss what's been going on and the IPCC panel decision to clear Inspector Kehoe of any misconduct of professional standards, despite the fact that he tried to set Stephen Pearce up. So that'll be on tonight, 9 o'clock, ukcolumn.org/live.
Excellent. Well, Brexit, we're clearly not going to leave.
Well, this is just more scaremongering. This is this time from the British Bankers Association, saying that banks are running away as quickly as possible because of the threat of Brexit, that they basically would not be able to perform their fraud in this country if they didn't have access to the European single market. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So I just ask, why would we care? They're saying, the British Bankers Association saying that the banking system is one of the biggest industries in the country, and we should love it to bits and really do everything to encourage it to stay.
What does it produce, Mike?
What does it produce? Hell.
Money from nothing, and the rest follows.
Yeah.
Right. Where do we go now? Well, basically, BBC here has got a report on Brexit, and it says that Theresa May has got to hold talks with heads of the devolved nations. I was very interested to see this word nation cropping up. It figures several times in the BBC report. But the key statement was how the UK leaves will not boil down to a binary choice, which would lead one to suppose that it isn't going to be we're in or out. We're going to move from a totally grey area into a slightly less grey area. So effectively, we'll still be in, but we're telling everybody we're coming out.
Yeah, because I think that's the key point. Out isn't part of the picture at all.
No. So this was an interesting little paragraph that we saw in this report from the BBC. The Institute for Government warns that imposing a Brexit settlement on Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland may be legally possible, but if it proves impossible to find consensus, the result may be a serious breakdown in relations between the four governments and nations of the UK. So here's the plan, Mike, that they're going to continue to drive this through with the aim of complete and utter breakdown and chaos in the UK.
Yes, but you've got to understand that this strengthens the union, Brian.
Right.
Right. This is what Theresa May says. These arguments only strengthen the union.
Yeah. Okay. More arguments equals better country. Right. Okay. Trouble with that one. Well, let's have a look at the Institute of Government. Encourage people to go and check this. You need to have a look at the people involved because I couldn't possibly show it on screen. There's just too much information. But suffice to say, up pops Lord Sainsbury pretty quickly, Baroness Amos, and a lot of lords and sirs and dames. And if you look at their track record, it is government, it's international government, it's big banking, it's large global corporations, it's huge legal companies. These are not ordinary people, and this is not an independent organisation. It's got something else driving it here. But we were interested to just find by coincidence that one of their team, well, this is the lady who directs the outfit, Bronwyn Maddox. She's a former journalist and also a former investment analyst. So she's been involved in some ways with the big banks, but you hop from banking to journalism. It's a natural move. And why were we interested with this lady? Well, because she'd been invited to talk here at an organisation called ICSC brackets Land. And this is connected through to the military. So ICSC Land said it was very interesting and thought-provoking talk from Bronwyn on trends shaping defence. And I found this very interesting as to why a journalist and former semi-banking analyst person would be invited in to teach the military something. But they were obviously very impressed with it. This is the ICSC Land organisation. This is a shot taken from their Twitter page. But they are part of the Defence Academy of the United Kingdom. And here it gets very interesting because if you have a look at that, have a look at their webpage, what you're actually looking at is privatised military training. So it's still got a UK government header, but actually what's running here is a sort of international corporatist, globalist training academy. And if we look at this tweet here, it's somebody else from ICSC is saying that there was a very good talk about change management. So here's the change agenda. And of course, that will lead us very nicely back into the Institute of Government. So what are we seeing? We're seeing an unelected third sector, which is actually controlling government policy. I could almost wonder at this stage, Mike, whether all of these third sector organisations now form the real government of UK, and Parliament is simply this irrelevant puppet show to keep the rest of us busy.
Absolutely.
Check it yourself. Here is part of the website for the Institute of Government. And if you want to know what sort of outfit it is, well, here it is. We work with all the main political parties at Westminster, totally independent, Mike. And with civil servants in Whitehall, we provide evidence-based advice that draws on the best practice from around the world. And our funding, it says at the bottom, comes from the Gatsby Charitable Foundation, which is one of the Sainsbury Family Charitable Trust. So I don't know whether I'm being cynical here, but it seems that the supermarkets are now helping us run government.
So there's a comment in the chat box from Alex there saying 10 Carlton Gardens, which was the address on that website, is a Foreign Office MI6 property.
Oh my goodness! Well, that couldn't possibly be, could it?
No.
Well,
I'm sure it's only. I'm sure it's only. A one estate. Shared accommodation situation. I'm sure.
Global estate, I think it's called, or something, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, there we are. This is the amount of information that you can actually come up with if you simply follow the links through, because these people love boasting about what they're doing, and that's a very good example of how we can get from supermarket gurus through to those running the Ministry of Defence. Well, an offshoot of this story was this tweet which we came across, particularly interesting. Very simply, blue is Remain, and the purpley, pinky red is Brexit. And this is a study that's actually been done, and as a result of some Freedom of Information requests, which says that as you look across government committees, you can see that rather more of them are for the Remain camp than they are Brexit. So we just label this government Brexit bias. If you think the government is representing the will of the general public, no, it isn't. They are now a law unto themselves, and the intention is to stay in the European Union. So here's land, because this was part of the trail that led us through to the information we're looking at. Not very many tweets there, not many people following, but apparently this is an important organisation helping to drive our defence. And if we have a look at the Defence Academy, these are some of the key people. So we've got Sir Tom Phillips. He is Fellow of Chatham House, Ambassador to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or was previously, and Ambassador to Israel, also Advisor to the Prince's Charities International Sustainability Unit.
Right.
So no conflict of interest there, I shouldn't think. And we got Mark Alexander. He's a particularly interesting gentleman. So he was part of Ploughshare Innovations Limited. Now, see what it says. It says generates income in non-defence markets by exploiting technology originally developed by the Ministry of Defence. So the public pays for this, and then the spin-off is that private companies come in and take all that effort
and make a profit.
And they make a profit. And when you get involved in it, you then come back into working through with those, helping arrange all the companies around the Ministry of Defence in the first place. And if you have a look at what he's been involved with, he's been involved with privatisation of the electricity industry, and then flotations of companies, but also takeovers, acquisitions, and lots of big things. Chiltern Railways, Bovis Land Lease, finance director of PFI businesses. So this is all about corporatisation, privatisation. We had to have a token military man in there, and here he is, Major General Julian Free. What can we say about him? Well, he was out in Iraq, 4th Mechanised Brigade. I must say, he looks a very nice person there, but I guess you have to have somebody from the military in amongst this, otherwise you can't claim it's part of defence.
Yes.
And we'll bring in Steve Petrie here, because corporate services, here's the financial stuff. So he was with the Ministry of Defence in 1991 as a political military analyst. And then he heads up as UK's political advisor at US Central Command. And he's also got an appointment at HQ Surgeon General. So I'm not quite sure how that works, Mike, but it seems to be largely corporate.
Fascinating. Okay, well, let's, at the start of the month, we introduced Priti Patel, who is the International Development Secretary. And of course, we were talking about Afghanistan. And the UK was setting out its long-term plans to support a stable, secure and prosperous Afghanistan by 2020. So we're going to explain how we're going to do that in a second. But if we remember, this was about UK international aid assistance to provide long-term development support, £750 million over the next 4 years, dependent on the security situation. And between 2017 and 2020, we're expected to deliver private sector-led growth and opium, agriculture prosperity, opium, further UK support to ensure that Afghanistan can be declared a mine-free country. We've got to get rid of the mines so we can grow some more opium. And we're going to tackle corruption by making sure there's more of it, opium, and long-term support to help reintegrate long-term displaced people so they can go back to growing some opium, and so on. So, in fact, the United Nations has released the latest opium statistics for the harvest for 2016 from Afghanistan. Production up 10% since 2015. Now, that's perhaps not surprising because 2015 wasn't a great poppy crop, but it's the next couple of statistics which are more interesting. Eradication down 91% since 2015. And the reason for that is because last year was a pretty bad poppy crop, relatively speaking. I mean, it's been at record levels pretty much since we went in there in 2001. But last year they had a bit of a downturn because of the bad crop, the bad harvest. So, of course, you couldn't eradicate quite so much. So eradication down 91%. And this is the important thing, the average yield. So we're sending in all this international aid and we're making people much more productive. So per hectare, we're producing 30% more this year than we did last year. So this is really great. Now, I just want to remind people of a little bit of context on this, because in December 2010, I believe it was, John P. Walters, who was from the U.S. Office of Drug Control Policy, wrote a memo. WikiLeaks released it in December 2010. The memo was written in April 2007, and this man wrote, confidential, not to be seen by foreigners. ONDCP Director Walters met with Commander International Security Assistance Force General McNeil in Kabul, and separately with RC South Commander Major General Van Loon, who's Dutch, in Kandahar. He was particularly dismayed by the British effort. They had made a mess of things, he said, in Helmand. Their tactics were wrong, and the deal that London cut on Musakala failed. We'll talk about that in a second. The Musakala agreement opened the door for narco traffickers in that area, and now it's impossible to tell the difference between the traffickers and the insurgents. So this is what he wrote in 2007. The situation has not improved in the meantime. The eradication, even when it's at its heights, is about 1 or 2% of the total crop. It's ridiculous. So anyway, the Musakala deal was mentioned there. Was an agreement between the Taliban and the British military. The British military would pull out of key drug trafficking centre of Musakala in Helmand. In return, the Taliban agreed not to attack International Security Assistance Force troops in the region. So as a payoff for the Taliban not attacking our military and international military there, we agreed that they could go in and grow a bunch of opium. Now, it's true to say that in 2001, when the Taliban were in control, that opium crops had fallen to nothing. Really, literally nothing. Now, the Taliban sort of changed since the invasion into Afghanistan. The Taliban have changed their stance, and they're happy to permit opium dealing now because, of course, that gives them money resource that they need. But we should also make the point that in 2008, this Afghan MP, Nazimeh Niazi, had made some comments about not just the United Kingdom, but the United States as well. She said, as long as foreign forces are present in Afghanistan, the cultivation, production and trafficking of drugs will continue in the country. She said that Helmand province in southwestern Afghanistan had been transformed into a profitable centre for foreign states to earn an expense fund for their deployment in the country. She said that heroin production labs in Helmand, which did not exist before the war in Afghanistan, were now plentiful and were working overtly. And discussing eradication, she said that when she'd been touring the area, she had realised that the British, in fact, destroyed some small farms whose owners were poor farmers and didn't have power and armed forces to their disposal, and were only planting 1 or 2 hectares of opium poppies. So they get rid of the small farmer, the competition, and make sure that the big farmer is the big corporate farming enterprises are the only people that can grow this huge quantity of opium.
So you've got a simpler control structure.
Well, but all the money's going into the corporate interests rather than into the small farmer. Now, of course, Britain grows opium in this country for use by the NHS. And I'm just going to ask once again, why is that the case? Clearly, the answer to that should be obvious. It's because the opium which is grown in Afghanistan is going into the heroin market, illegal drugs. That money is being laundered by the international banking system. It's one of the sources of income that is absolutely required at the moment for the international banking system. And of course, the National Health Service doesn't pay enough. So that's why we have farmers in this country growing opium as well when Afghanistan's poppy crops continue to go through the roof.
And we have to say that Lady MP, very brave lady to speak out saying the things she's saying.
Yes, indeed. Okay, finally then, well, you have long been asking the question, how are judges appointed in the United Kingdom, Brian? And of course, they're appointed by the Judicial Appointments Commission. And the Lord Chancellor has just appointed Lord Kaka to chair the Judicial Appointments Commission. So he's chairing that. He's also chairing the commission which appoints lords themselves. So that's quite interesting. But he is a professor of surgery at University College London and chairman of UCL Partners. And his research interests are in the field of thrombosis. So I'm not quite sure how that qualifies him to select judges, but of course he's completely independent.
And so the basis is that we select judges via a selection committee, and then you ask the question, who appoints the members of the committee? And the answer to that is
the Lord Chancellor.
The Lord Chancellor does. So it is a completely secretive, circular old boy network is appointing the judges. And of course, this is one of the reasons that we have such trouble in our courts now, because if a judge is identified as failing, or indeed is identified as being corrupt, there is nowhere that you can actually go to get them dealt with. Well, on that note, we'll just give another reminder for the British Constitution Group event on the 19th, because amongst others, Guy Taylor is talking, and Guy has spent certainly the last several years helping to expose what is actually going on in courts, which are being run by a judge as if it was a place of business. And of course, there is no room for a jury to make true and proper decisions over law. And so the situation at the moment continues. That brings us to the end of the news today. If you're not already a subscriber of UK Column, can we encourage you to sign up? And you can also make a donation if you'd like to do that. We need your help to keep going, and it's only with the help of the wider public that we can continue to keep producing the news. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.